This is the Hypergo HB14M 1/14 scale brushless RC car, and in this video we're going to figure out if you should get this over the new Arrma Granite Grom. On paper, these two cars aren't that similar, but I think in practice they're going to be more similar than you think. Let's dig into it. Before we take a look at this, let me show you what you get with it, and you're going to want to see this because it's a lot. This car comes with a complete spare body, a spare wing, a whole nother set of tires. These are paddle tires, spare arms, some upgraded springs, a charger, a wheelie bar, transmitter, and some more spare parts. Now that is a lot of extra stuff to get with a car like this, and it definitely adds to the value, but none of this means anything if the car itself isn't good. Let's take a closer look at it. First thing I want to mention is this transmitter. This transmitter is okay. It's the one that Hypergo packages in with all of their cars, and it feels cheap. Definitely not as high a quality as the SLT2, but it does get the job done. Now moving on to the car, this is 1/14 scale, so it is a fair amount bigger than the Granite Grom, but these are going to be both used in similar types of terrain, smaller areas, places without really tall grass, that sort of thing. The very first thing that jumps out at me is the quality of this. You can tell right off the bat that this thing is not nearly as high quality as the Granite Grom is. For instance, this body is very difficult to get on and off. These body post holes are a little bit too small, and things just don't quite align well. Not a big deal, but it is noticeable. And more noticeable to me is how much slop there is and everything. Look at this. See how much slop there is in all of that? That kind of slop equates to poor handling off-road. Whether or not it's actually going to cause this thing to be less fun off-road is something we're going to have to find out. But if you compare that to how the Granite Grom comes out of the box, see how little play there is in everything? That makes a big difference in how the car handles off-road, and I think that's one of the reasons why this little car handles so much better than most of the other little cars out there. This car does come with an impressive feature set though. We've got some knockoff trenchers here. Trenchers are some of my favorite tires. We've got plastic bodied shocks that do have some metal bits on them, but they are mostly plastic. Some nice big beefy CVDs in the front, some really beefy universal joints in the rear, a self-proclaimed waterproof receiver box, which is nice, but given that this ESC is not waterproof as far as I know, I'm not really sure why it's there. Flipping this over, we've got an aluminum chassis. We see all Phillips self-tapper screws. Again, not really my favorite thing to see. Another great advantage that the Granite Grom has is it has these nice, big, beefy hex head screws, which makes it really easy to work on. Now, speaking of ease of working on it, we're gonna find out how easy this is to work on in just a minute when we pull a differential out of it. This does have front and rear differentials. It does not have a center differential. It's got a 45 amp 3S capable ESC and motor, which is one big advantage it has over the Granite Grom. And one of the reasons why I say even though this is more expensive, these two vehicles are fairly comparable. Once you put a brushless system, which I think is a great idea in the Granite Grom, they're going to be very similarly priced. Let's go ahead and pull a differential out of this thing and see just how easy it is to work on. Here's the start of my frustration with these kinds of cars. I'm 30 seconds into this. I've taken out 3 different kinds of screws already, one of which was bent, and now I have this screw which holds the center brace in. It's thread locked in, and I can't get it out. Okay, I was able to get the screw out of the other end, so I think we can just leave this screw in here and take the whole thing out with the screw installed still. Let's keep going. Okay. We got the differential module out. Look at what it took to get this thing out of here. Look, there's got to be 7 different types of screws here at least. This is a giant mess. I've been doing this for 20 years. I'm not sure I'm going to get this car back together without making mistakes. Imagine someone who just bought this car trying to get this differential out of here to fix it. Let's take a look at the diff. All right, we've got nice machined gears here on the differential. Look really, really good, actually. Let's dig a little bit deeper. You know what? I'm sorry, guys. I'm not going to go any further into this differential. We'll assume there's metal gears inside there. We'll assume it looks really nice. Feels kind of crunchy, but you're going to need a specialized screwdriver to get in here, and I don't feel like going and getting one and risking stripping these screws out. I'm going to put this thing back together, and let's hope it's a little bit more fun to actually use than it is to work on. All right, guys, I managed to get it back together, and look, no extra screws. Now, I counted when I had this apart, 36 screws, 9 different kinds just to get to the front differential. For comparison, the Grom has 9 screws of 2 different kinds to get to the front differential. And that has been my experience with the vast majority if not all, of these small cars. They don't appear to be designed with repair in mind, and you're gonna have to fix these cars. Now keep in mind, the front differential is probably the hardest thing to get to on most vehicles because the steering's involved, there's a bunch of stuff around it, but again, 9 screws, 36 screws. Maybe it's so durable that you never have to work on it and it won't be a problem. Only one way to find out. Let's get a battery in this thing, see how fast it is, and then see how fun it is. All right, first up, let's see how fast this thing is. Whoop. Top speed. All right, let's bring it in. All right, guys, 40 miles an hour. That's not too bad for off-road running. That's the same thing as I got on the Grom with 3S and the upgraded brushless system. Let's do some bashing. All right, guys, looks like we just had a wheel come loose and lost a hex pin here. So I was able to grab one of those from another vehicle. Unfortunately, that's not something that comes in the parts kit. All right, guys, we got this thing back together. Now, I've had a bunch of people ask me about what kind of screwdriver I use. This is a No Cry, weird name, but a great screwdriver. I've actually modified this thing to be better for RC. I'm going to be making a video about that modification, and I'm going to be giving one of these away that I've modified in that video. So make sure you get subscribed if you don't want to miss that. Speaking of things you want to be subscribed for so you don't miss, it's time for... All right, guys, so what did I break on this car? Well, I put this thing through a lot of abuse through a couple of packs, and body's held up pretty well. You can see the receiver box is trying to punch through here. Body post mounts are starting to rip a little bit, but other than that, it's in good shape. And don't forget, you get a spare one of these. We broke off the rear wing, got a spare one of those with it. We don't really need the rear wing anyway. Other than that, this thing held up very well. Nothing broke in the steering, rear suspension's still good, front suspension's still good. Chassis is nice and flat, no major damage to it. Tires held up well. I did lose a hex pin, but that was my fault for not making sure the wheels were tight. That didn't happen a second time. Even the fans are still working. So do I think that this is a better buy than the Arrma Grom? Once you put a brushless system in the Grom, they're gonna be fairly similarly priced. And this is a bigger car and has more features and comes with more spare parts. That being said, if you do break this, especially something inside the arms, you're gonna be in for a lot of work to fix it. That could be something that really would be a turnoff for a lot of people, especially new people to the hobby. Spare parts might not be available as readily or necessarily as long as it would be with the Grom. And you give up a lot of handling with this car. I don't know if you noticed when I was out there, but this thing is a handful, especially with the power that it has. And that comes down to this. And it really comes down to this. That didn't happen for me bashing. This is the way it was new. When the tires can go whatever direction they want, no matter what you're trying to tell it to do, that makes it pretty difficult to handle. In comparison, the Granite Grom is much tighter, and that's why, even though this is a smaller car, it handles just as well off-road. The only advantage that this Hypergo has is that it has bigger tires and it's a little bit taller so that it can go over rocks and big sticks a little bit more readily. Now, that being said, This is a pretty cool car. It's not a huge amount of money. And if this thing looks interesting to you, I don't think you'll be disappointed if you buy it. It's fun, it's durable, it's very wild out there. I've had a lot of fun bashing this car and a lot of fun with you today. Make sure you check out this next video.